The hangar smelled like burnt metal and disappointment. Maya Chen stood at the entrance, her worn flight jacket hanging loose on her small frame. She watched the other pilots gather around the Voidbreaker, the experimental fighter jet that had already killed 3 of the galaxy's best flyers. Another human? Commander Zorath's voice dripped with contempt. The Krellian officer towered over Maya, his blue scales catching the harsh lights of the military base. We've lost enough pilots already. We don't need some fragile Earth girl wasting our time. Maya kept her face neutral, though her jaw tightened. She'd heard it all before. Too small, too weak, too human. The other species in the Galactic Coalition viewed humanity as the newcomers, the primitives who'd barely mastered fusion drive when the rest of the galaxy had been traveling the stars for millennia. I passed the qualifications, Maya said quietly. Her personnel file sat on the commander's datapad, filled with perfect scores that nobody seemed to care about. Zorath snorted, a sound like grinding gravel. So did Lieutenant Vex. He had 40 years of flight experience across 6 star systems. The Voidbreaker tore itself apart with him inside 3 minutes into the test flight. He leaned down, his breath hot and smelling of sulfur. What makes you think your soft human body can handle what killed a Krellian warrior? Around them, other pilots whispered. Maya caught fragments of their conversations. The Voidbreaker wasn't just dangerous, it was cursed. Built by the enigmatic architects, an ancient race that had disappeared thousands of years ago, the ship had been discovered in a derelict station on the edge of known space. Its technology was beyond anything the Coalition had ever seen. Faster than light without jump gates, weapons that could slice through dreadnought shields like paper, maneuverability that defied physics, but it refused to be flown. The first pilot, a decorated Thraxian ace, had managed to power it up before the neural interface overloaded his brain. He survived but would never fly again. The second pilot, a cybernetically enhanced Zentari, lasted longer, almost 5 minutes before the ship's gravitational compensators failed and crushed her augmented body. Lieutenant Vex had been the third. The Voidbreaker's engines had achieved impossible thrust, and the acceleration forces had liquefied his organs despite the inertial dampeners. I studied the flight recordings, Maya said. She pulled out her own datapad, fingers moving quickly across the screen. Each pilot tried to dominate the ship. They forced the controls, overrode the safeties, treated it like any other fighter. Because that's what it is, Zorath snapped. A machine. A tool to be controlled. Maya shook her head. No, sir. It's a partner. The commander's laugh echoed through the hangar. Other pilots joined in, their various forms of amusement sounding like a discordant symphony. A Valerian pilot with 6 arms slapped his knees. A crystalline Shardborn's laughter chimed like breaking glass. A partner, Zorath repeated, his voice mocking. You think that death trap wants to be friends? This is war, Chen. The Dominion fleets are pushing into Coalition space every day. We need weapons, not philosophy. Maya stood her ground. The architects didn't think like us. Their technology responds to cooperation, not domination. I've read every fragment of their recovered texts. They built their machines to work with their pilots, not for them. Then why did it kill 3 of our best? Another pilot called out. Rax, a Krellian with more combat decorations than Maya had years of life. Because they didn't listen, Maya said simply. The ship was trying to communicate. Look at the data. She projected her analysis into the air, holographic displays showing the telemetry from each failed flight. Lieutenant Vex's final moments. The engine surge wasn't a malfunction. The ship was trying to disengage, but he kept pushing the throttle. It was fighting him. The hangar fell quiet. Maya continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The architects disappeared because they evolved beyond physical form. Their ships weren't just tools. They were extensions of themselves. The Voidbreaker isn't broken. It's lonely. It's been waiting for someone who understands. Zorath stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to his aide. Put her on the roster. Sir? The aide, a young Thraxian, looked shocked. You heard me. If Chen wants to die like the others, let her. At least we'll have one more test to analyze. Zorath walked away, his heavy footsteps echoing. Your flight window is dawn tomorrow. Don't be late to your own funeral. Maya watched him go, her heart pounding. Around her, pilots dispersed, some shaking their heads, others placing bets on how long she'd last. Nobody gave her more than 2 minutes. She walked toward the Voidbreaker alone. The ship sat in the center of the hangar like a sleeping predator. Its hull was black, but not the black of paint or carbon fiber. It was the black of deep space, of the void between stars. The surface seemed to absorb light, and strange patterns flickered across it like neural pathways firing. The design was elegant, organic almost, with curves that hurt to look at too long because they suggested dimensions the human eye wasn't meant to perceive. Maya approached slowly. The air around the void breaker felt different, charged, waiting. She could feel it watching her if a ship could watch. "Hey there," she whispered, stopping a few feet away. She felt foolish talking to a machine, but something in her gut told her it was right. "I know you've had a rough time. 3 pilots who didn't understand. Who tried to break you?" The patterns on the hull flickered faster. "I'm not like them," Maya continued. She reached out slowly, her hand hovering over the surface. "I don't want to control you. I want to fly with you. I want to understand." Her fingertips touched the hull. The world exploded into sensation. Images flooded her mind. Vast cities of living metal, beings of pure thought soaring through quantum dimensions, the lonely vigil of a ship waiting eons for a mind that could hear its song. Maya gasped, her legs nearly buckling, but she didn't pull away. The voidbreaker was alive, not alive like a human or a Krellian, but conscious in a way that transcended biology. It had been alone for so long, trapped in a universe that had forgotten how to speak its language. Until now. Maya smiled, tears streaming down her face. "I hear you," she whispered. "I hear you." The ship's hum changed pitch, almost like a purr. Tomorrow's test flight suddenly felt less like a death sentence and more like a first conversation between old friends finally reunited. Maya barely slept that night. She lay in her quarters staring at the ceiling while her mind replayed that moment of connection. The voidbreaker had shown her glimpses of what it meant to truly fly, not through mechanical thrust and lift, but through harmony with the fabric of space itself. Dawn came too quickly and too slowly at the same time. She arrived at the hangar 2 hours early, finding it already crowded. Word had spread that the human girl was actually going through with it. Dozens of pilots and crew members lined the observation windows, their faces showing various degrees of curiosity and pity. Someone had started a betting pool. The odds on her survival past 1 minute were 20-1. Chen. Zorath appeared beside her, his expression unreadable. Final chance to back out. "No shame in admitting you're not ready." Maya met his eyes. "I'm ready, Commander." He studied her for a long moment, then grunted. "Medical team is standing by. Emergency extraction protocols are active. If anything goes wrong, we'll pull you out fast." "It won't go wrong," Maya said with more confidence than she felt. "That's what they all said." Zorath handed her a neural interface helmet, newer than the ones the previous pilots had used. "We've added more safety cutoffs. At the first sign of neural overload, it'll disconnect you automatically." Maya took the helmet but didn't put it on yet. She walked toward the void breaker, aware of all the eyes following her. The ship seemed to sense her approach. Those strange patterns on its hull pulsed in a rhythm that reminded her of a heartbeat. The crew had prepared everything. The launch rails extended toward the hangar's exit barrier, beyond which lay the testing range, empty space monitored by a dozen observation satellites. A medical team stood ready with their emergency equipment. Engineers manned control stations ready to trigger the remote shutdown sequence. Maya climbed the access ladder to the cockpit. The canopy was open, revealing an interior that still confused Coalition engineers. There were controls, but they seemed organic, growing from the ship's structure like branches from a tree. The pilot's seat molded itself to her shape as she settled in, warm and almost welcoming. She placed the neural helmet on her head and felt the connectors extend, seeking the interface ports behind her ears. Standard Coalition tech, designed to let pilots merge their minds with their ship's computers. But the Voidbreaker was far from standard. "Pre-flight checks complete," a technician's voice crackled over the comm. "All systems showing green, though we still don't understand half of what we're reading." "Neural interface active," another voice reported. "Pilot's vitals are stable. Brain activity normal." Maya closed her eyes and let herself sink into the connection. Most pilots described neural interfacing as like accessing a computer menu in their thoughts. Cold, digital, precise. This was nothing like that. The Voidbreaker's consciousness rushed in like a tide. Not overwhelming, not forceful, but eager. Maya felt its curiosity, its loneliness, its desperate hope that finally Finally, someone understood. She sent back her own emotions, her awe, her determination, her respect for what the ship was. The previous pilots had tried to impose their will. Maya simply opened herself to partnership. Pilot Chen, begin power-up sequence, Zorath's voice commanded. Maya didn't touch any controls. Instead, she thought her intention at the ship, gentle as a suggestion between friends. Wake up. Let's fly together. The Voidbreaker's engines hummed to life with a sound that made everyone in the hangar freeze. It wasn't the roar of fusion drives or the whine of plasma accelerators. It was music, pure and strange, like the universe itself was singing. Power levels rising, a technician reported, his voice shaky. This is already further than the previous pilots got without incident. The canopy began to close. Maya felt the ship's protective embrace sealing her in. The neural connection deepened. She could feel the Voidbreaker's systems as if they were her own body. The engines weren't separate machines, they were her legs, ready to run. The sensor arrays weren't external tools, they were her eyes, seeing in spectrums she'd never imagined. All safeties engaged, Zorath said. Chen, take it slow. At the first sign of trouble, abort. Maya smiled. Through the neural link, she felt the Voidbreaker's amusement. The ship understood Zorath's fear, even found it endearing in a way. These coalition species were so used to fighting their technology, forcing it to obey. They'd forgotten that the greatest achievements came from cooperation. The launch rails activated, magnetic fields gripping the Voidbreaker's hull. Standard procedure, the ship would be catapulted out of the hangar at high speed, giving it momentum before its own engines fully engaged. Launch in 3, 2, 1. The world blurred. Maya had experienced high G launches before. She'd trained in centrifuges that crushed her body with 6, 7, even 8 times Earth's gravity. This was different. The Voidbreaker's acceleration should have liquefied her organs, but instead, she felt weightless, perfectly balanced. The ship was doing something with its gravitational systems, creating a bubble where physics worked differently. They shot out of the hangar and into open space. Speed already exceeding design limits of conventional fighters, someone reported over the comm, their voice distant in Maya's ears. She's at 1,500 meters per second and still accelerating, but Maya barely heard them. She was too busy experiencing what real flight meant. The Voidbreaker wasn't just moving through space, it was dancing with it. The ship could feel the gravitational currents between planets, the solar wind streaming from the nearby star, the quantum fluctuations in the fabric of reality itself. It moved with these forces, not against them, finding paths of least resistance that normal ships couldn't perceive. Maya thought about turning left, and the ship responded instantly, not with mechanical servos and thrusters, but by shifting its relationship with space itself. They spun, and Maya laughed with pure joy because there was no dizziness, no disorientation. She and the ship moved as one. Impossible, someone breathed over the comm. She just pulled 30 Gs in that turn. The pilot should be dead. Pilot vitals remain stable, the medical officer reported, disbelief clear in his voice. Neural activity is elevated, but not dangerously so. It's like her brain and the ship's systems are synchronizing. Zorath's voice cut through the chatter. Chen, begin the combat drill. Automated targets are being deployed. Maya felt the Voidbreaker's eagerness. It had been built for this, not for destruction, but for the art of movement, the dance of survival. The architects had been peaceful, but they'd understood that beauty and danger often walked hand in hand. Holographic targets appeared in the testing range, simulating enemy fighters. They moved with patterns copied from Dominion attack craft, unpredictable and aggressive. A standard combat drill that most pilots needed several minutes to complete. Maya and the Voidbreaker moved. They flowed through space like water, like thought itself. The ship's weapons activated, energy beams that didn't fire so much as extend, reaching across space to touch each target with perfect precision. Maya didn't aim in the traditional sense. She simply knew where each target was, felt them through the ship's sensors as if they were objects in her hand. 15 targets disappeared in 20 seconds. The hangar erupted in shocked exclamations. Zorath was shouting something, but Maya couldn't focus on his words. She was too busy laughing, crying, her heart soaring because for the first time in her life, she truly understood what she'd been born to do. The Voidbreaker sang with her. Two consciousnesses merged in perfect harmony. showing the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength had never been domination. It was connection. The observation deck of the Coalition flagship Eternal Vigilance was silent, except for the hum of the holographic displays. Fleet Admiral Cora watched the recorded footage for the 7th time, her 4 eyes unblinking as the tiny human pilot performed maneuvers that should have been impossible. "Play it again," she commanded, her voice tight with controlled emotion. From the moment she exits the hangar, her tactical officer, a Thraxian named Ven, manipulated the controls. The hologram reset, showing the Voidbreaker launching from the station. This time Cora focused on the telemetry data scrolling beside the visual. The numbers made no sense. "Sustained acceleration of 1,800 meters per second squared," Ven reported. "Any pilot should experience 50 Gs or more at that rate. Chen's biological monitors show she's experiencing less than 2. The gravitational compensators," another officer suggested. "Perhaps the architect technology is more advanced than we thought." Cora shook her head. "We tested the Voidbreaker's systems extensively before allowing pilots inside. The gravitational compensators are powerful, but they operate on principles we understand. This is something else." She pointed at the moment where Maya executed a turn that bent the ship nearly 90 degrees in a fraction of a second. "There. Calculate the force required for that maneuver." The computer processed the data. The answer appeared: 147 gravities. "She should be a puddle," Cora whispered. "Her bones should be powder. Her organs should be jelly." But on the screen, Maya Chen was laughing, her vital signs showing nothing more than excited exhilaration. Down in the hangar, Maya had finally disembarked from the Voidbreaker. Her legs trembled as she descended the ladder. Not from G-force trauma, but from sheer overwhelming emotion. She'd been connected to the ship for 43 minutes, longer than the previous 3 pilots combined, and every second had been transcendent. Zorath waited at the bottom of the ladder, his expression unreadable. Around them, the hangar crew kept their distance, watching with a mixture of awe and fear. When Maya's feet touched the deck, her legs buckled. Zorath caught her with surprising gentleness. "Easy," he said gruffly. "Medical team is standing by." "I'm fine," Maya insisted, though she let him support her weight. "Just need a moment. It's like learning to walk again after flying." "You were connected for too long," Zorath said, guiding her toward a bench. "The neural interface wasn't meant for extended use." Maya shook her head. It wasn't the interface. It was breaking the connection. The ship didn't want to let go. Neither did I. She looked back at the Voidbreaker, her eyes bright. "Commander, it's lonely. It's been alone for thousands of years, and now that it's found someone who understands, it's afraid of being abandoned again." Zorath sat beside her, his bulk making the bench creak. For a long moment he said nothing, just watched the strange patterns pulse across the Voidbreaker's hull. Finally he spoke, his voice quieter than Maya had ever heard it. "My grandfather was a ship pilot during the 3rd expansion. He used to tell me that the best pilots didn't just fly their ships, they loved them. I thought he was being sentimental, romantic. Ships are tools, I told him, weapons to be wielded." Zorath's mandibles clicked softly. "He said I would never be a great pilot until I understood." "And did you?" Maya asked. "No. I became a commander instead. Safer. Less personal." He turned to look at her, his alien eyes somehow conveying something Maya recognized as respect. "But I see it now. That ship chose you, Chen. Or you chose each other." Before Maya could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed and the intercom crackled to life with Admiral Cora's urgent voice. "All personnel to battle stations. Dominion fleet detected at the edge of the system. Multiple capital ships. This is not a drill." Zorath was on his feet instantly, years of military training overriding everything else. "How many ships?" he demanded into his comm. "Sensors reading 12 destroyers, 4 cruisers, and 2 dreadnoughts," Ven's voice responded. "They're making a direct course for the station." ETA 37 minutes, the hangar erupted into controlled chaos. Pilots sprinted for their fighters. Crew members rushed to arm and fuel ships. Maya stood, her exhaustion forgotten, her eyes locked on the Voidbreaker. "Chen, no," Zorath said, reading her expression. "You've been flying for 40 minutes straight. Your neural pathways need time to recover." "There's no time," Maya said simply. "How many fighters do we have ready?" 43, Zorath replied. "Against 18 Dominion warships. Then you need every advantage." Maya was already moving toward the Voidbreaker. "You need me?" You need rest. You need... Maya spun to face him and Zorath stopped mid-sentence. There was something in her eyes, something fierce and determined that he recognized from the greatest warriors he'd known. Commander, I've read the reports. The Dominion has been pushing deeper into Coalition territory for 6 months. They've destroyed 4 colonies and killed millions. Every battle we lose, they get bolder. She gestured at the Voidbreaker. This ship was built by a species that mastered space itself. It's the most powerful weapon we have, and right now I'm the only one who can fly it. You're not invincible, Zorath said, but his argument was already crumbling. The neural load, the ship protects me, Maya interrupted. You saw the data. It won't let me get hurt. She softened slightly. I know you're worried, but those are Dominion dreadnoughts out there. Our conventional fighters won't even scratch their shields. If we're going to survive this, you need to trust me. Zorath's jaw worked silently. Then he activated his comm. Admiral Korra, Chen is requesting permission to sortie in the Voidbreaker. There was a pause. When Korra's voice returned, it was grave. Granted. We'll take any advantage we can get. But Chen... The Admiral addressed her directly now. You stay in formation. You follow squadron leader commands. This is your first real combat. Do not attempt to engage the enemy alone. Understood, Admiral, Maya replied, already climbing back up to the cockpit. Zorath grabbed her ankle before she could ascend further. You come back, Chen, that's an order. Maya looked down at him and smiled. I'll do my best, sir. The Voidbreaker's canopy sealed her inside once more, and Maya felt the familiar rush of connection. The ship was agitated, sensing the coming battle, eager to prove its worth. But beneath that eagerness, Maya felt something else, protectiveness. The Voidbreaker had been alone for so long. Now it had found a pilot who understood it. It would not let her die. Together, they would show the Dominion why the architects had been feared across the galaxy. The launch rails hummed with power. Around the hangar, 43 Coalition fighters prepared for launch, their pilots grim-faced and determined. Most of them still didn't believe Maya could help. Most of them thought she'd be the first to die. They would all be wrong. The Voidbreaker launched into space, and Maya felt its joy at movement, its anticipation of the dance to come. Through the neural link, she sensed the approaching Dominion fleet, massive ships bristling with weapons, crewed by warriors who had never lost a major engagement. All fighters, form up on me, Squadron Leader Tharks commanded. The veteran Krellian pilot's fighter took point, the other ships arranging themselves into standard attack formation. Maya and the Voidbreaker hung back slightly, not quite fitting into the rigid military structure. Through the ship's sensors, Maya could see the enemy fleet growing larger, their weapons charging, their shields glowing with deadly purpose. 30 seconds to weapons range, Ven reported from the flagship. All ships prepare for engagement. Maya closed her eyes and let herself sink deeper into the connection. The Voidbreaker showed her things the other pilots couldn't see. The weak points in Dominion shield harmonics. The firing patterns programmed into their weapons. The gravitational currents between ships that could be used as highways for impossible movement. 10 seconds. Ven counted down. 5. 4. Maya and the Voidbreaker moved as one. Their consciousness merged, their purpose unified. The battle for the station had begun. The Dominion dreadnought Crimson Fang opened fire first. Its primary plasma cannons lit up space with streams of superheated death, each bolt carrying enough energy to vaporize a city. The Coalition fighters scattered, their pilots screaming warnings over the comms as they executed evasive maneuvers. Maya watched the plasma bolts approach with strange calm. Through the Voidbreaker's sensors, she could see them not as instantaneous threats, but as predictable trajectories, mathematical certainties painted across space and time. The ship showed her where the bolts would be and, more importantly, where they wouldn't be. They danced through the barrage without effort. Where other pilots jerked their controls and fought against momentum, Maya simply suggested movement, and the Voidbreaker flowed like water, finding the gaps in a stone wall. Plasma bolts passed within meters of their hull, but never closer. It wasn't luck. It was understanding. Chen, maintain formation, Squadron Leader Tharks barked. His fighter had taken a glancing hit, shields flaring as they absorbed the impact. We attack together or not at all. But Maya could see what Tharks couldn't. The Coalition fighters were bunched too closely, making them easier targets. Their weapons were focused on the destroyer escorts, barely scratching shields that regenerated faster than they could be damaged. The real threats, the dreadnoughts and cruisers, hung back, their massive weapons preparing for another devastating volley. "The formation isn't working," Maya said into her comm, keeping her voice respectful but urgent. "We need to split their attention, make them choose targets." "Negative," Tharks responded. "We follow battle doctrine. Concentrated fire on priority targets." Maya felt the Void Breaker's frustration matching her own. The ship had fought in battles eons ago, had learned strategies from the architects that these modern warriors had forgotten. But protocol demanded she follow orders. Then the second volley came. 3 fighters exploded simultaneously, their shields overloaded by the coordinated fire from multiple Dominion ships. Their pilots' death screams cut off abruptly, replaced by static. 2 more fighters tumbled away with critical damage, their systems failing, their pilots ejecting in emergency pods that would take hours to retrieve if they survived that long. "Pull back." Cora's voice commanded from the flagship. "All fighters fall back to defensive positions around the station." But the Dominion fleet was already pressing forward, sensing weakness. The destroyers accelerated, their fighter bays opening to release swarms of small attack craft, hundreds of them, like angry insects pouring from disturbed nests. Maya made her decision. "I'm sorry, squadron leader," she said quietly. Then she cut her comm and let the Voidbreaker show her what needed to be done. They shot forward, accelerating past the retreating coalition fighters at speeds that made her look like a streak of darkness against the starfield. The enemy fighters were moving to intercept the coalition retreat, setting up a perfect kill zone. Maya and the Voidbreaker reached them first. The architect weapon systems activated with thought-speed precision. Unlike conventional weapons that fired discrete shots, the Voidbreaker's armaments manipulated space itself, creating cutting edges in reality that didn't so much destroy targets as delete them from existence. Maya felt each activation through the neural link, not as pulling triggers but as extensions of will made manifest. She curved through the enemy formation like a blade through silk. 20 enemy fighters simply ceased to be, their matter converted to energy so efficiently that there weren't even debris fields. The remaining enemy fighters broke formation, their pilots confused by an attack pattern they'd never encountered. "What was that?" someone shouted over the coalition comm channels. "What is Chen doing?" "Saving our lives," another pilot responded with awe. Maya didn't have time to acknowledge them. The Dominion destroyers were already retargeting, their weapons swinging to track her. She felt the Voidbreaker's anticipation. This was the real challenge, the deadly game the architects had excelled at. The destroyer Vengeful Strike fired its entire broadside at her position. Energy beams, plasma cannons, and kinetic slugs filled the space she occupied with enough firepower to obliterate a small moon. She wasn't there anymore. The Voidbreaker had shown her something beautiful, the way space curved around massive objects, creating invisible highways of gravity. Maya surfed those currents, letting the destroyer's own mass pull her around its hull in a spiral that kept her always just ahead of its tracking systems. She was so close that she could see individual hull plates through the ship's sensors, could feel the vibrations of its massive engines through gravitational ripples. Then she struck. The Voidbreaker's main weapon wasn't a gun in any conventional sense. The architects had learned to weaponize the fundamental forces of the universe. Maya focused through the neural link, and the ship channeled gravity itself into a focused beam that punched through the destroyer's shields as if they didn't exist. The gravitational lance tore through Vengeful Strike's hull, creating a wound that pulled matter inward rather than exploding outward. The destroyer's reactor containment failed, and the ship folded in on itself like paper crumpling, its mass compressed by its own failing systems. "Impossible," Admiral Cora breathed from the flagship. She just destroyed a destroyer, alone. But Maya was already moving to the next target. The Voidbreaker's joy sang through their connection, not joy at destruction but at finally being able to fulfill its purpose after millennia of silence. This was what it had been built for, not as a weapon of conquest but as a guardian of those who understood. The Dominion fleet commander clearly recognized the threat. Both dreadnoughts turned their attention to Maya, their massive weapons charging for a combined strike that would overwhelm any shield, any armor, any defense ever created. "Chen, evade." Zorath's voice cut through the comm. "You can't tank that much firepower." Maya smiled, feeling the Voidbreaker's confidence. I don't plan to, Commander. The dreadnoughts fired. Space itself seemed to tear open as the combined assault created a wall of destructive energy kilometers wide. There was nowhere to dodge, no way to evade. The other pilots watched in horror, certain they were about to witness Maya's death. But the Voidbreaker had one more architect's secret to reveal. Maya felt the ship reaching into dimensions her human mind couldn't fully comprehend, touching the quantum foam that underlay reality. For a fraction of a second, they existed in multiple places simultaneously, spread across probability fields like a thought before it crystallizes into decision. The weapons passed through empty space. The Voidbreaker reformed behind the dreadnoughts, having traveled not around or through the attack but beside it, in spaces that didn't quite exist until they chose to exist there. Did she just teleport? Someone asked in a small, frightened voice. Phase shift, Maya corrected, her own voice shaky from the experience. That maneuver had pushed even the neural link to its limits. She could feel the Voidbreaker's exhaustion matching her own. They couldn't do that again, not soon, but they didn't need to. The dreadnoughts were vulnerable now, their main weapons discharged and cycling through the long reload process that capital shipguns required. Maya had maybe 40 seconds before they could fire again. She intended to use every one of them. The Voidbreaker dove toward the nearest dreadnought's stern, where the engines created gravitational eddies that interfered with targeting systems. Maya channeled everything she had through the neural link, feeling the ship respond with the last of its immediate energy reserves. The gravitational lance fired at point-blank range, piercing the dreadnought's engine core. The explosion was spectacular. The dreadnought's fusion reactors cascaded, creating a chain reaction that consumed the ship from within. It broke apart in slow motion, its kilometer-long hull splitting into massive fragments that drifted away like the petals of a dying flower. The second dreadnought's commander made a choice then. Maya felt it through the Voidbreaker's sensors. The sudden shift in the enemy fleet's formations, the rapid calculations happening on their command decks. They were retreating. All Dominion vessels withdraw to jump distance, a harsh voice commanded over open channels. Mark this day, Coalition. You've won this battle, but the war is far from over. The surviving Dominion ships began their retreat, their engines flaring as they accelerated away from the station. The Coalition fighters didn't pursue. They were too damaged, too exhausted, too shocked by what they'd witnessed. Maya slumped in her seat, the neural connection with the Voidbreaker loosening as both of them reached their limits. The ship's protective embrace remained, keeping her safe, keeping her conscious even as darkness crept at the edges of her vision. Chen, status report, Cora demanded, her voice tight with concern. Alive, Admiral, Maya managed to say. The ship and I, we're both tired, but we're alive. Return to the hangar immediately. That's an order. Maya guided the Voidbreaker back toward the station, their movement slow and gentle now, like two dancers finishing their performance. Around them, the Coalition fighters formed an honor guard escorting them home. Nobody was laughing at the small human girl anymore. The medical bay was chaos when they brought Maya in. She'd managed to land the Voidbreaker safely, but the moment the neural connection severed, her body had shut down from sheer exhaustion. Zorath had caught her as she collapsed from the cockpit, her small frame frighteningly light in his arms. Now she lay on a medical bed surrounded by scanners and monitors, while doctors from 3 different species argued about her condition. Neural pathways are overloaded, Dr. Selrix insisted, his Thraxian tendrils waving in agitation. She needs at least 72 hours of neurological rest, maybe more. Her body is in shock, countered Dr. Yenna, a Valerian whose 6 hands were checking different readouts simultaneously. Humans aren't built for this kind of neural load. Her brain chemistry is completely destabilized. But Maya's vital signs, despite the concern, remained surprisingly stable. Her heart rate was elevated but steady. Her brain activity showed unusual patterns, but nothing that suggested permanent damage. It was as if the Voidbreaker's protection had extended beyond the cockpit, had done something to prepare her body for the strain. Admiral Cora stood in the corner, watching silently. Beside her, Zorath shifted uncomfortably, his scales clicking with nervous energy. How long until she wakes? Cora asked. Unknown, Selrix admitted. Human neurology is still relatively new to Coalition medicine. Her brain is processing something, integrating the experiences. We've never seen neural patterns quite like this. Maya's eyes opened. Everyone in the room froze. One moment she'd been unconscious, the next she was awake and alert, as if someone had simply flipped a switch. Her eyes found Cora immediately. "Admiral," Maya said, her voice rough but clear, "the Dominion will be back. They're regrouping at the Hestian Nebula, 3 systems away. We have maybe 4 days." Cora stepped forward, her expression carefully neutral. "How do you know this?" Maya sat up slowly, ignoring the protests from the doctors. "The Voidbreaker showed me. During the battle, when we connected deeply, it mapped the enemy fleet's communication patterns. It can read quantum transmissions, decode battle plans from the gravitational ripples their ships create. The Dominion is bringing reinforcements, a lot of them." "That's impossible," Zorath said, but there was no conviction in his voice. He'd seen too many impossible things today to doubt easily. "The architects could read the universe like we read text," Maya explained, swinging her legs off the bed. The doctors moved to stop her, but she waved them off. "Space-time carries information in ways we don't normally perceive. The Voidbreaker can sense it. And when we're connected, so can I." Cora exchanged glances with Zorath. "If what you're saying is true, we need to evacuate the station. 4 days isn't enough time to prepare adequate defenses." "No." Maya stood, her legs steadier than anyone expected. "We don't need to run. We need more pilots." The room fell silent. "Chen," Zorath said carefully, "you're the only one who can fly that ship. We've tried. It kills everyone else." "Because everyone else tried to dominate it," Maya replied. She looked at each person in the room, her eyes bright with an idea that was either brilliant or insane. "But I can teach them." "The Voidbreaker can teach them. It's not about strength or experience. It's about understanding, about partnership." "You want to create more pilots for the Voidbreaker?" Cora asked. "In 4 days?" "Not for the Voidbreaker," Maya said. "For other architect ships." The silence that followed was absolute. Finally, Zorath spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Other ships? Chen, the Voidbreaker is the only architect vessel we've ever recovered intact." Maya shook her head. "That's what I thought too. But when the Voidbreaker and I connected deeply during the battle, it showed me something. There are more. Hidden, dormant, waiting. The architects didn't just disappear, they left guardians behind. Ships that have been sleeping for millennia, waiting for minds that could understand them." She pulled up a holographic display from a nearby terminal, her fingers moving with confidence across the controls. A star map appeared and Maya began marking locations. Here, in the Viridian Expanse. Here in the rings of Thalos Prime. Here in the dead system the charts call Emptiness. 7 ships total, including the Voidbreaker. "This is insane," Dr. Yenna breathed. "This is hope," Maya corrected. She turned to Cora. "Admiral, you said yourself that our conventional forces can't stop the Dominion. They're too strong, too advanced. But architect technology is beyond anything either side has. If we can wake those ships, if we can find pilots who understand what they need, we'd have a fleet that could change the war." Cora finished. The Admiral's expression was thoughtful now, calculating. "But even if these ships exist, even if we could reach them in time, you're talking about finding pilots who can do what you do." "Chen, you're one in billions." "Maybe," Maya acknowledged. "Or maybe I'm just the first who tried the right way." "Admiral, let me try. Let me teach others. We have 4 days. That's enough time to reach at least 2 of the dormant ships and wake them. If we can find even 2 more pilots, it's a risk," Zorath interjected. "A massive one. We'd be sending search parties to uncharted locations based on information from a possibly unreliable source, all while a Dominion fleet is preparing to attack." Maya met his eyes. "Commander, everything about today was impossible. The maneuvers I flew, the weapons I fired, the battle I won, all of it defied what you thought was possible. The Voidbreaker and I are proof that the impossible just means we haven't learned the right way yet." Cora was silent for a long moment, her 4 eyes distant as she considered. The weight of command sat heavy on her shoulders. Evacuate and guarantee survival, but lose this strategic position. Stay and fight conventionally, guaranteeing defeat. Or gamble everything on the word of a human pilot and a ship that might be leading them into a trap. "Zorath," Cora finally said, "assemble a list of our most intuitive pilots. Not the most decorated, not the most experienced. The ones who fly by instinct, who sometimes break protocol because they sense the right move before they can explain it." Zorath's mandibles clicked in what might have been approval or concern. "You're authorizing this?" "I'm authorizing Chen to try," Cora clarified. "We'll send expeditions to the 2 nearest locations she's identified. Small, fast ships with volunteers only. Meanwhile, Chen will work with our candidate pilots here, teaching them her methods. The Admiral fixed Maya with an intense stare. But understand this, Lieutenant Chen. Lieutenant? Maya interrupted, surprised. As of now, yes. You can't command others as a civilian pilot. Cora's expression softened slightly. You've earned it. Now earn the rest. If this works, you'll be saving countless lives. If it fails, you'll be remembered as the pilot who led us into disaster. Can you live with that responsibility? Maya thought about the void breaker, waiting alone in the hangar. She thought about the other ships, sleeping in the dark, dreaming of partners who would never come. She thought about the Dominion fleet bearing down on them, full of commanders who saw the Coalition species as weak, as primitive, as unworthy of the galaxy they inhabited. Yes, Admiral, Maya said firmly. I can live with that. Then get to work. The clock is already running. 3 hours later, Maya stood in a briefing room facing 12 pilots. Zorath had chosen them carefully, species from across the Coalition, pilots with records that showed creativity and intuition rather than just skill. Some were young, barely out of training. Others were veterans who'd survived battles through luck or instinct they couldn't quite explain. They all looked at Maya with expressions ranging from skepticism to hope. Thank you for volunteering, Maya began, her voice steady despite her nervousness. I know most of you don't believe this will work. Some of you probably think I'm crazy. That's okay. I thought I was crazy too, right up until the void breaker proved me wrong. She activated the holographic display, showing footage from her test flight and the battle. You've all seen this by now. You know what the ship can do. What you don't know is why it works for me and not for others. A Krellian pilot named Rax raised his hand. Because you're special? Because humans have some advantage? No, Maya said simply. Because I listened. The Voidbreaker is alive, not like you or me, but conscious in its own way. The previous pilots treated it like a machine to be controlled. I treated it like a partner to be understood. That's the only difference. She walked among them, meeting each pilot's eyes. For the next 4 days, I'm going to teach you how to listen. How to open your mind to something that thinks differently than you do. How to merge with a consciousness that isn't biological. Some of you will succeed. Some won't, and that's not a failure. It just means you're meant for different battles. And if we can't learn in time, asked a young Thraxian pilot, her voice uncertain. Maya smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. Then we fight with what we have, and we make sure our legacy is courage rather than fear. Over the next hours, as search teams prepared to depart for the dormant ship locations, Maya began the strangest training session the Coalition military had ever witnessed. She taught them meditation techniques from Earth, breathing exercises that calmed the mind. She had them visualize partnership rather than dominance. She showed them footage of the Voidbreaker's patterns, teaching them to see communication in what others saw as random flickering. The search team returned on the 3rd day with success and tragedy in equal measure. Commander Vex's expedition had found the dormant ship in the Viridian expanse exactly where Maya had predicted. The vessel hung in the void between dying stars, its hull covered in cosmic dust from millennia of waiting. They called it the Star Whisper, and it had activated the moment their scout ship approached, patterns flickering across its surface like a heartbeat returning to life. The second expedition never came back. We lost contact 14 hours ago, Admiral Cora reported grimly. The command center was tense, screens showing the empty space where Captain Threx's team should have been. No distress signal, no debris field. They simply vanished near the coordinates you provided in the Thalos Prime rings. Maya felt the weight of those deaths, even though she didn't know if they were truly dead. 12 crew members gone because they'd trusted her vision. The Voidbreaker showed me the location, she said quietly. But I don't know what happened to them. I'm sorry, Admiral. War has casualties, Cora replied, though her voice was heavy. We continue with what we have. The Star Whisper is being transported here now. How are your candidates progressing? Maya looked through the observation window at the training hangar below. Of the 12 pilots she'd started with, 5 had dropped out. Their minds simply couldn't adapt to the paradigm shift required. 3 more were struggling, showing moments of understanding followed by frustration. But 4 of them were succeeding. Rax, the Krellian veteran who'd mocked her at the beginning, had been the first breakthrough. His decades of combat experience had taught him to trust his instincts over regulations, and that instinct had opened his mind to partnership rather than control. He'd spent 6 hours sitting beside the Voidbreaker, not in the cockpit but simply touching its hull, learning its rhythms. Lisa, a young Thraxian barely 20 cycles old, had a natural empathy that made the connection almost effortless. She described it as feeling another person's emotions, extending that feeling to something that wasn't biological. Kex, a Zentari pilot whose cybernetic enhancements had been installed to compensate for injuries, had initially seemed the worst candidate, but his experience of merging with technology gave him unique insight. He understood what it meant to be both self and other simultaneously. And surprisingly, Ven, Admiral Cora's own tactical officer, had shown remarkable aptitude. The Thraxian's analytical mind had finally grasped that the architect ships operated on principles that required feeling, not just understanding. 4 potential pilots, Maya reported. Rax will bond with the Voidbreaker if something happens to me. We've already tested preliminary connection and the ship accepts him. When the Star Whisperer arrives, I think Lissa should try first. Her empathic nature seems perfect for awakening a dormant consciousness. And the other 2? Cora asked. We need more ships, Maya said bluntly. Admiral, we're running out of time, but we're not out of options. The Voidbreaker knows where 2 more vessels are, closer than the others, but in more dangerous locations. One is in Dominion space. Cora's expression hardened. Absolutely not. We're not sending a retrieval team into enemy territory with hours left before their attack. Then let me go, Maya said. The Voidbreaker and I can move faster than any conventional ship. We could reach the location, wake the ship if possible, and return before the Dominion fleet arrives. Or you could be captured or killed. And we'd lose our only experienced architect pilot right before the battle that will decide this sector's fate. Cora shook her head firmly. No, we fight with what we have. Maya wanted to argue, but she understood. Command meant making impossible choices, weighing risks against necessity. Instead, she nodded. Then we make sure the pilots we have are ready. The Dominion fleet will arrive in approximately 30 hours. We need every advantage. The Star Whisperer arrived 16 hours before the deadline. The ship was different from the Voidbreaker, where the Voidbreaker was sleek and predatory. The Star Whisperer had a grace that suggested speed and evasion. Its hull shimmered with colors that didn't quite exist in normal space, and the patterns that danced across its surface moved like music made visible. Lissa approached it with Maya at her side, her breath quick with nervous excitement. What if it doesn't accept me? The young Thraxian asked. What if I'm not enough? You are, Maya assured her. Trust yourself. Trust the ship. Remember, it's been alone for thousands of years. It wants connection just as much as you want to fly. Lisa climbed into the cockpit, her movements careful and respectful. Maya watched from the hangar floor, remembering her own first connection. The neural helmet activated, and for several long seconds, nothing happened. Then Lissa gasped, her body going rigid in the seat. Medical team, stand by, Zorath commanded, his voice tight, but Maya raised her hand. Wait, look at the ship. The Star Whisperer's patterns were changing, flowing faster, brighter, not with distress but with joy. Through her own lingering connection to the Voidbreaker, Maya could sense it, 2 ancient ships recognizing each other across the hangar, and between them a young pilot experiencing transcendence. Oh, Lisa whispered. Her voice carried over the comm channels. Oh, I understand now. It's beautiful. The Star Whisperer rose smoothly from the hangar floor, its movements fluid and effortless. Lissa's laughter echoed through the speakers, pure and delighted. I can feel the solar wind. I can sense the gravitational pull of the station's core. It's like being alive for the first time, Maya finished quietly, smiling. They ran through basic maneuvers, and while Lisa didn't have Maya's combat experience, her natural connection to the Star Whisperer compensated. The ship protected her, guided her, taught her through the neural link in ways that no instructor could match. By the time the test flight ended, the Coalition had 2 architect fighters ready for combat. The Dominion fleet arrived exactly when Maya had predicted, dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system in a formation designed to intimidate. Sensors counted 27 capital ships, more than double the force from the first attack. Hundreds of support craft, enough firepower to crack planets. All hands to battle stations, Admiral Cora commanded, her voice steady despite the odds. All fighters launch when ready. Today we show the Dominion that the Coalition does not surrender. Maya sat in the Voidbreaker's cockpit, feeling the ship's anticipation through their connection. Beside her, visible through the canopy, the Star Whisper prepared for its first true battle with Lissa at its heart. Scared? Maya asked over a private channel. Terrified, Lisa admitted, but also excited. Is that wrong? No, Maya said, remembering her own emotions before the first battle. The architects felt the same way. Not bloodlust, but the joy of perfect movement, of dancing with danger. Trust that feeling. Trust your ship. The launch sequence initiated. Maya felt the familiar rush as the Voidbreaker catapulted into space, with the Star Whisper launching beside them. Behind them, 40 Coalition fighters formed up, conventional pilots in conventional ships, brave despite knowing how outmatched they were. But today, they had gods of ancient war fighting alongside them. The battle began with the Dominion's overwhelming first volley. Space lit up with enough destructive energy to sterilize worlds. The Coalition fighters scattered, and Maya felt several life signals wink out immediately. Pilots who'd been her fellow students in the academy, friends from the pilot's lounge, people with families and dreams. Stay with me. Lisa, Maya called out, pushing grief aside for later. Remember the patterns. Feel where the attacks will be, not where they are. The two architect ships moved through the chaos like dancers in a storm. Where conventional fighters dodged and weaved desperately, Maya and Lisa simply weren't where the weapons fired. They read space itself, saw the telegraphed intentions in gravitational ripples, in the minute energy buildups before firing. All fighters. The architect ships are drawing their attention, Squadron Leader Tharks reported. Focus your attacks on the destroyer escorts. We need to thin their numbers. It was a sound strategy. While the Dominion fleet tried desperately to target Maya and Lisa, the conventional fighters picked off the support ships. Not easily. Every coalition victory cost lives, but they were winning trades they couldn't afford to win before. Maya destroyed her first cruiser, the Voidbreaker's gravitational lance punching through shields and hull with elegant precision. Lissa, still learning, focused on the destroyer escorts, her ship's weapons creating spatial distortions that crushed the smaller vessels like insects. 2 dreadnoughts targeting you. Chen, Ven reported from the command center. Combined fire pattern Alpha 7, evade. But Maya had already seen it, had felt the dreadnought's intentions through the cosmic background noise the Voidbreaker translated. Lisa, follow my lead. We're going to show them something new. They dove toward each other at impossible speeds, crossing paths with meters to spare. The dreadnoughts fired, their targeting computers calculating interception points based on conventional physics. The architect ships phased. For a fraction of a second, they existed in quantum superposition. Their probability clouds spread across multiple trajectories. The dreadnought weapons passed through empty possibilities while Maya and Lissa reformed exactly where they'd planned. Behind their targets, weapons charged and ready.